morning, colleagues. We'll call this meeting to order. Welcome to the meeting of the Special Joint Committee on Medical Assistance in Dying. I'd like to begin by welcoming our witnesses, as well as those that are watching via the web, and to let you know that we are continuing our study, our examination of the statutory review of the provisions of the Criminal Code relating to medical assistance in dying and their application. My name is Yana Martin. I am the Joint Chair of the Senate for this committee, and I'm joined by the Honorable Marc Garneau, the House of Commons Joint Chair. So just a few items for our witnesses. We'd like to remind members and witnesses to keep their microphones muted unless recognized by name by one of the joint chairs, and a reminder that the comments should be addressed through the joint chairs. And when speaking, please speak slowly and clearly. Interpretation in this video conference will work like an in-person committee meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English, or French. So again, welcome to our witnesses, and we do have one of our witnesses, Ms. Gabrielle Peters. Her video is not on, but we should be able to hear her voice, and she's also assisted by an individual who will be assisting with interpretation as needed. So welcome to Ms. Peters as well. Our witnesses are as follows. From Barreau du Québec, Sylvie Champagne, and Ms. Catherine Claveau, and I understand you will be sharing your 5-minute time for the testimony. And from Disability Filibuster, Ms. Gabrielle Peters, co-founder, but as I said, her video may be off during her testimony. We will see how it works. And then from Inclusion Canada, Ms. Krista Carr, Executive Vice President, also by video conference, and at 5:45 in the morning. So thank you for getting up early to join us. So we will begin with opening remarks by Ms. Champagne and Ms. Claveau, who will share the 5 minutes, followed by Ms. Peters and then Ms. Carr. So Ms. Champagne and Ms. Claveau, you will each, I'm assuming, will have 2.5 minutes in your opening remarks. Thank you very much. So you may begin.
Madam Chairperson, Mr. Chair, Vice Chairs, dear members, I am Catherine Claveau, Bâtonnière du Québec, and I am accompanied by Maître Sylvie Champagne, Director of the Secretariat of the Order of Legal Affairs of the Bureau du Québec. I'd like to thank you for your invitation to participate in the consultation on issues related to medical assistance in dying for persons with disabilities. Since the very beginning, in 2010 for Quebec, the Barreau du Québec has actively contributed to thinking on the issue of medical assistance in dying. Medical assistance in dying and its extension raise serious legal and ethical questions. For this reason, our thinking is guided by the following fundamental principles: the right to self-determination and dignity, the right to access to end-of-life care and medical assistance in dying throughout Quebec, the right to access to end-of-life care and medical assistance in dying throughout all of Quebec, the right to equality, a right that cannot be ignored when it comes to fully realising the right to life and the right to autonomy of each person who can consent to medical assistance in dying, protection against discrimination, in particular by not perpetuating stereotypes of groups of people considered vulnerable, by concluding from the outset that they are incapable of fully consenting to medical assistance in dying. The decriminalisation of medical assistance in dying and its legal framework were confirmed by the Supreme Court of Canada in the Charter decision. In this decision, the court recognised that medical assistance in dying should be available to any capable adult in cases where, quote, 1, the person clearly consents to ending his or her life, 2, the person has a serious and irremediable health problem, including an ailment, disease, or disability that causes him or her persistent suffering that is intolerable in light of his or her condition. In 2016, the Criminal Code was amended to respond to this ruling. Section 241.22a now expressly provides that a person with a severe and incurable disability meets the test set out in Section 241.21c, namely, that he or she is affected by serious and irremediable health problems. In 2019, in the Truchon decision, the Superior Court of Quebec concluded that the end-of-life criterion and the test of natural death has become reasonably foreseeable, compromise the right to life and the right to respect for the dignity of the person, but also we emphasise to the right of equality of persons, particularly those considered vulnerable. Indeed, the latter are erroneously considered unfit, as vulnerable simply because of their disability. People with disabilities may be perfectly capable of exercising fundamental choices about their life or death, and this capability must be assessed on a case-by-case basis. Only a person who meets all of the following criteria must receive medical assistance in dying. The person is eligible or would be eligible but for the applicable minimum residency or waiting period for publicly funded healthcare in Canada. We'd invite the committee to consider, as the Superior Court stated, that the full autonomy of persons affected by a disability must be exercised not only at the end of life, but also at a time during their lives, and that this, even if it means death, when the other conditions of eligibility for medical assistance in dying are met. We urge the committee to consider the position stated in the decision that, quote, like any other able-bodied or knowledgeable person, persons with disabilities may have a rational and legitimate desire to end their lives, given their condition, but especially because of the intolerable and persistent suffering they experience. Although we must remain vigilant, it is far from obvious that a person will be able or willing to receive medical assistance in dying solely because of his or her disability. We recognise that the right to equal access to medical assistance in dying presents a very real challenge. It must be offered to all, taking into account the specificity of the disability, adequately equipping the healthcare team to assess consent to care and providing the necessary means and resources to enable persons with disabilities to make informed decisions in the light of the situation. That being said, we believe that the Carter decision and the Truchon decision are sufficiently clear and consistent to guide the committee in its thinking about persons with disabilities and medical assistance in dying. In closing, the lack of harmonisation between the Criminal Code and the Act respecting end-of-life care cannot be overlooked. Since 2015, a multitude of bills and legislative changes have emerged that have made it difficult, if not perilous, for lawyers, patients and physicians to navigate. We have provided you with a medical assistance in dying timeline that illustrates this factual situation. Since 2016, the Barreau du Québec and 5 other provincial orders have repeatedly called for the harmonisation of laws. It is essential in order to ensure the protection of the public and to guide professionals who will have to administer medical assistance in dying, that the conditions be clear, precise, and above all, that they not be contradictory. In this regard, provincial and federal constitutional jurisdictions can be exercised concurrently, without the resulting laws being considered incompatible. Quebec's reflection on medical assistance in dying is very advanced and enjoys a social and transparent consensus. We therefore invite the committee to support the provinces in their efforts to expand medical assistance in dying, for example, those considered by Quebec government. Thank you very much for listening.
Misunderstood it. You were presenting for both of you, so we will go on to the next witness. Ms. Peters, I think we can hear you, and if you are able to turn your video on, that would be also helpful. But go ahead. You will have the floor for 5 minutes. Oh, there we see you. Thank you.
My name is Alex Koch. I'm acting on behalf of Gabrielle Peters as her echo today. Good morning. I'm joining you very early in the day from the unceded territories of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. Modern Western ableism, and particularly scientific ableism, serve as historical and ongoing links between colonialism and MAID. Modern Western ableism forms the basis and provides the rhetorical and pseudo-scientific framework for constructing hierarchies, defining other, establishing lesser, as well as delineating arbitrary lines between, quote, deserving and undeserving. Within your ableist system, Track 2 MAID extends the coercive but seemingly arm's-length power of the state to provide a designated class of citizens with premature death at the hands of the state. I'm speaking to you today as the co-founder of the Disability Filibuster, a national grassroots initiative started by Catherine Frazee and myself on the eve of the passing of Bill C-7 and the creation of a second track for MAID. Disability Filibuster was in part a response to disabled people being marginalised from the discussion and decision-making around Bill C7 and our frustration that our collective anger was cordoned off and isolated, much like our lives. The filibuster was the only space created for the only people targeted by the expansion of MAID to voice their views. The media locked down and dominated by the endless public relations work of those lobbying for its expansion. Concerns about the social contagion of covering the ending of one's life was tossed aside. The line between editorializing was blurred to the point of romanticizing and lionizing those who made the choice not to continue to be a, quote, burden on those around them and to, quote, end things on their own term. You could hear Frank Sinatra singing between the lines. No mention was made of the previously publicly articulated and enthusiastic supports for involuntary euthanasia of disabled people during the time of Tracy Latimer's murder in reshaping the narrative to make these same people the champions of autonomy. The political sphere was dominated by the disproportionate representation of politicians enthusiastic for expanding MAID and or for being seen in favourable light by its well-connected and well-heeled proponents. A foundation sharing the same name and lineage as the Prime Minister played more than a minor role in propelling support to the forefront. Disabled people are a large minority, but we are still the minority, a minority that is disproportionately poor, racialized, and not noted for its strong political value and influence, as is evidenced by our policy absence in political platforms and campaigns during elections. We didn't have a chance. There was no place for disabled people in the discourse around a policy that specifically and solely affects disabled people and no one else. Even today, the only place for us in media coverage is as human interest stories about those among us who have resigned ourselves to applying for MAID after tiring of seeking for non-existent support and unable to gulp down the prospect of a future of subsistence-level poverty, inflicted and normalized as a component of our broader dehumanization and oppression. In order to be allowed a presence, you have to agree to die. So removed, uninterested, and ill-informed are politicians and media about our lives and the discussions we found ourselves regularly characterized as right-wing religious fanatics. This characterization is so laughably incorrect, I struggle to express the absurdity of it. Over the course of 2 years, Disability Filibuster has hosted approximately 80 hours of Zooms. These included panels, readings, art, casual conversations, and live processing of our grief and exhausted rage. A great deal of knowledge was shared. But the truth is, I didn't come here today under the illusion that I can alter minds or inform those who have consistently, persistently, and willfully chosen to do the least possible to inform themselves about the lives of disabled people, particularly those living in poverty and on the extreme margins of society, your society. I came to put it on the record. Canada's expansion of MAID to disabled people whose deaths are not reasonably foreseeable reifies and builds on the existing dehumanization of disabled people in Canada, breathes new life into the goals of never dismantled eugenics, and is based on the ableism that formed this country's foundation, and as such represents a serious threat. The material and social conditions and absence of positive liberty facing disabled people in Canada are fundamentally different from those of non-disabled people. The very different social contract offered to disabled people has yet to provide us with a guarantee of freedom to live in the community, to not be forced into institutions should our needs exceed those deemed appropriately human, the denial of our equal right to travel, and the provision of infrastructure that would make us intended participants, not unintended participants in society. I didn't come here with illusions. I came here to remind you that history changes and that one day our roles will be reversed and you will be the ones answering questions.
Thank you, Ms. Peters. Next, we will have the testimony from Ms. Krista Carr.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I'm coming to you today from the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin, Songhees, and Esquimalt peoples. Inclusion Canada is a national grassroots organization made up of 13 provincial territorial associations, 300 local associations, representing over 40,000 individuals with intellectual disabilities and their families. For over 6 decades, we've advocated for children and adults with intellectual disabilities to be recognized as inherently human, of equal worth and value. Our federation has been at the forefront of trying to end institutionalization, protect lives, and secure equal access to healthcare. Canadians with disabilities do not yet enjoy a life of rights and opportunities equivalent to those without disabilities. This is the deeply rooted nature of ableism. Not a single national organization of persons with disabilities supported the expansion of MAID, and over 200 independent, non-affiliated organizations representing persons with disabilities actively opposed the expansion. One organizational voice appears to have prevailed over all our voices. This one organization is not constituted of or by persons with disabilities, has never been on the front lines of advocating for needed supports, funding, or systemic change to improve the lives of persons with disabilities, yet its voice prevails by claiming the dignity of persons with disabilities lies simply in their death. I can't think of a more telling example of paternalism and ableism, which together are as insidious and ugly as racism, and now as deadly. We know a Canada where persons with intellectual disabilities were warehoused by the tens of thousands in institutions run by healthcare practitioners who segregated, isolated, maltreated, forcibly sterilized, and anonymously buried persons with intellectual disabilities. We know a Canada where Canadians with disabilities were denied equal access to life-saving transplants, where infants with treatable conditions went untreated and allowed to die from preventable conditions, and others who had and have DNR orders imposed on them without their consent or their family's consent. We know a Canada when a parent murders their child with a disability, they are characterized as mercy killers. A Canada where during COVID, people with disabilities were threatened by triage protocols. This is the context in which we see MAID. It is impossible for the lives of persons with disabilities to be safeguarded by a system reliant on the subjective opinion of healthcare practitioners as if they live, work, and think outside of our culture of endemic ableism. As Canadians, we acknowledge the vastly higher rates of suicide among Indigenous youth and adults as a tragic consequence of historical and societal devaluation that is crying out to be remedied. No one suggests that so many Indigenous people kill or attempt to kill themselves as a function of being Indigenous, but rather because of factors outside of themselves that lead to their suicide. Instead, we recognize this crisis as a tragedy at the personal, family, community, and national levels to be prevented through action that remedies the socio-historical and current factors that lead to far too many Indigenous people committing or attempting to commit suicide. In this case, an individual's choice to end their life does not outweigh the necessity to maintain this group and others' protection under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms by prohibiting assisted suicide on the basis of being Indigenous or race or gender or any other specific population. Only persons with disabilities as an identifiable group are now less protected under our Charter. Imagine a line of people seeking to end their lives and being sorted into two: those whose suicides need to be prevented, and those with a disability who are simply offered death. Let's be honest, it's not their perceived suffering that separates one from the other, but judgment as to the worth of one's life in contrast to the other, given their disability. For persons with disabilities struggling to be perceived as equally valued, to escape poverty, obtain essential supports, find an affordable and accessible place to live, secure employment, obtain equal medical care, and then when overwhelmed by all these challenges, the answer we give them? Death. This is the manifestation of cruelty in a law now being considered for extension to those with a mental illness, mature minors, and others, all inclusive of children and adults with disabilities. In closing, we do not support the expansion of MAID and call upon Parliament to reinstate the legislation that restricted it to those near the end of their life. Legislation that did not discriminate on the basis of disability by only permitting MAID for those near the end of life equally. In this context, disability is not a prejudicial factor. It is increasingly urgent that we return Canadians with disabilities to their inherent and full rights by restricting MAIDs to Canadians near the end of their life. Thank you.
Thank you very much to each of you, and I should also thank Ms. Peters for getting up so early. You two are also on the West Coast. So thank you very much for your testimony. We'll now move into our first round of questions. We have Mr. Cooper for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. I'll direct my questions to Ms. Peters. Ms. Peters, you said that modern ableism and scientific ableism are the basis of our current Track 2 MAID regime. Can you elaborate on this point?
Scientific racism was the rationale for white colonialism. Scientific and medical ableism is similarly used to support MAID for people with disabilities. Example, scientific ableism made it that not long ago, homosexuality was considered a disability. Presumably, we would now be discussing the possibility of MAID for people because they are gay if that hadn't changed. Today, more than 80% of US physicians reported that people with significant disabilities have worse quality of life, and this false assumption is believed to contribute to the health disparity experienced by disabled people. Medical ableism provides MAID with a false facade of legitimacy and rigor that our suffering can't be mitigated, and we are better off dead.
Thank you for that. And can you elaborate on the point that you made about the absence of positive liberty for persons with disabilities and the impact in terms of personal autonomy?
The lobbyists for euthanasia/assisted suicide/MAID reference concepts like freedom, autonomy, and dignity. With MAID, the state actually provides the funding and infrastructure for it to take place, a positive freedom. They argue that people have the freedom to make this choice, but imagine a country having elections, but that country setting up only one polling station in the entire country and opening it for only 1 hour on one day. There may be no laws barring anyone from voting, but there are also no laws making it possible. It is necessary for the conditions to exist that make living as a disabled person genuinely possible and desirable. A choice between forced institutionalization, poverty, and MAID is not a free choice.
And could you maybe speak to the fact that when we look at MAID, there's a great focus on individual suffering with respect to setting up a regime that affects not only individuals who are suffering, but society as a whole?
One of the hardest things about this quote-unquote debate has been the way those of us who oppose MAID have someone who has received MAID pitted against us in some sort of suffering competition. Are disabled people an oppressed group? Yes. And if so, is it possible to safely designate another group to be given the legal right to cause their death? Do the conditions for choice to occur exist? And are those even possible? You need to understand that we are nowhere near being in the position as a society to make death by state safe for disabled people at a policy level.
Ms. Carr, can you elaborate upon the lived experience of Canadians who live with disabilities since the passage of Bill C-7, and specifically the removal of what I believe is the most important safeguard, namely that death be reasonably foreseeable?
Well, we have been inundated with calls to our offices across the country. People are desperate, and there are a number of reasons behind that. But we've got, people always say, well, give us examples. We've got documented cases with people's names, people's faces, people's stories, and it's just piling higher and higher and higher. And these are all people with disabilities who want to live, who have been trying to live a dignified life in this country and have not been able to do that. There are no right to disability supports and services, no right to anti-ableism in the healthcare system, no right to palliative care, no right to, but yet we have a right to end their suffering, quote unquote, by causing their death, when really what they want to do is live, but they want to be able to live on an equal basis with others. And we've only given this special right to one group of charter protected people in our country, and that is people with disabilities. That is not a right that's available across the spectrum for anybody else. For everybody else, we want to do suicide prevention. We want to support them. We want to try to get them what they need and make sure they know they're valuable to our society. So let's not fool ourselves by pretending we're giving people autonomy here. There can be no autonomy when you do not have access to supports, services, you're homeless, you're living in poverty, you're inadequately housed, you're isolated, you're marginalized, and you can't even get your basic needs met. That is not giving people autonomous choices.
Thank you very much. I will now move on to Ms. Briere, who has 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madame Co-Chair. Bonjour à tous.
Yes, good morning to all the witnesses. I'll be asking my questions of Maître Claveau, and thank you very much for your questions today. In your opening remarks, you spoke about how important the right to self-determination is, the right to legality, and that one mustn't conclude right off the bat that someone who is disabled is unfit to consent to MAID. Have you considered additional measures that should be set out in the legislation for those particular cases? Thank you very much for your question, and I'll call on my colleague, Maître Champagne, to respond to you, please. Yes, it is our belief that there are yardsticks in the criminal code and in the end-of-life care legislation in Quebec, that they are already yardsticks in a sense, as Ms. Peters or Ms. Carr stated, that the choice of all Canadians, including disabled persons, would have free and informed consent and enjoy that right. So there wouldn't be a need for further yardsticks, in our opinion. Question: have you met with various organisations and groups of disabled persons in order to flesh out your point of view and to seek consensus out in the field on this issue? Well, we have been actively following the debates on MAID since the outset. And we're fully aware when it comes to the challenges, as Ms. Labatonière said, out in the field, that there are issues to do with social services access that disabled persons face. It is our belief, furthermore, that governments need to provide a whole array of services and care to disabled persons. And in doing so, strike a balance. But to our minds, one must avoid discriminating against disabled persons because all other Canadians enjoy this right. When an individual is declared incompetent and put under curatorship or guardianship, a psychosocial and medical report is required, and one therefore defers to the expertise of a social worker and a physician. Now, Maître Claveau, in your opening remarks, you referred to how important it is that the care team has the right tools, the tools that it needs. Is the training adequate at this current juncture? Are you confident that our physicians are able to properly assess any such requests in a rational and well-informed manner? Response: well, the Barreau du Québec has collaborated with the 5 orders of professionals that are subject to the MAID legislation, and we know that you'll be meeting with the Collège des Médecins in the second panel today. You can ask them that question too. But I can tell you that there is training provided to all professionals that are involved in MAID cases in Quebec. Of course, I can't speak to the other provinces in Canada, but in Quebec there is training on MAID. In previous testimony, we heard that consent of a parent, a loved one, or a caregiver might be included. In your opinion, should that be envisaged if an individual seeks out MAID?
Seconds.
Oui.
Well, if an individual is competent, we believe that that individual should consent. Now, obviously, that discussion takes place with a care team of professionals, and loved ones are usually involved in that. But from a legal standpoint, the individual must give their consent themselves. Thank you very much.
And now we'll go to Monsieur Thériault for 5 minutes.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you very much, Madam Co-Chair. Ms. Carr, you spoke at length about autonomy. Now, do you conclude in your testimony that were the state vis-à-vis disabled persons, were the state to say, well, we're going to exclude all disabled persons from access to medical assistance in dying, do you believe that that is what you're basically contending in your testimony? That is your ultimate thought on the matter?
What my ultimate thought on the matter is that
Je perds
when we
beaucoup de
first
temps.
Unfortunately, I lose a lot of time because of lag in interpretation, and I hope, chairpersons, that you will take into account any lag in interpretation. Thank you very much.
Allez-y, Madame Carr.
Please proceed, Ms. Carr.
Okay, thank you. I guess what I would say is, as far as autonomy goes, what my position is, or what our position is as an organization and in the disability community writ large, when we brought MAID in and we had it restricted to end of life, it was available on an equal basis to anybody whose death was reasonably foreseeable.
That's not my question, Ms. Carr. My question is what you conclude in your testimony that the state should not provide access to MAID, to provide disabled persons access to MAID. Is that the conclusion of your testimony?
The conclusion of my testimony is that MAID should not be provided to anybody whose death is not reasonably foreseeable, who is not at the end of their life, because that is the great equalizer that does not single out one group of people.
Agreed, I understand.
Merci,
death.
merci.
Thank you.
Maintenant.
Thank you. Now, you referred to autonomy. Autonomy, in the ethical sense and moral sense of the term, it doesn't boil down just to the physical autonomy of the individual. It's not reductive like that, or the social autonomy of the person, or the psychological autonomy of the individual. Autonomy, in the moral sense of the term, has to do with the competence of an individual to make a critical decision at the right time about their own human condition. Do you agree with that statement?
I think that I agree that there's more to autonomy than, in order to be able to make an autonomous decision, you have to be able to do that on an equal basis with others. And my point was, when you're living in poverty, you are unhoused, you are marginalized intersectionally because of race, because of indigeneity, because of gender, because of other factors. The conditions you're living in, the poverty you have, you can't make an equal choice on the basis of, on the same basis as someone else can make when you're living in those conditions. Your intolerable suffering is being caused by the socio-economic and community-based factors of your life. It isn't actually being caused by the disability. And that is what we see time and time and time again. And so I don't get to make...
Merci.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ms. Gladu and Ms. Truchon, who were disabled persons, severely disabled persons, what motivated them, in your opinion, since they asked for MAID after a full and rewarding life? What were they motivated by? Was it because they were victims of what you're describing, per se?
I know the story very well of both individuals, and Monsieur Truchon was living his life in the community, but he had a progressive disability, and ended up in Quebec, based on the system that they have for supporting people with disabilities, institutionalized. He lived in an institution for 5 years and fought like heck to get out of that institution and couldn't. And finally gave up and said, if I have to live my life this way, I want to be able to choose death instead. That was the factors that led Monsieur Truchon to that decision. Madame Gladue also had a progressive condition and knew or felt when her condition got to a certain point, she too would be forced to leave her home and community and live in an institution. And she didn't want to have to do that. So those
Je m'excuse,
factors.
pourtant,
I'm sorry, and yet Ms. Gladue waited for over a year and stated that she was relieved to finally have a choice. But what you'd like to do is take that choice away from her.
This is
Very
not a
briefly.
choice. This is not a choice we're giving to everybody. Do you not see that this choice is only being given to one group of people who have a very specific set of conditions? But I'm glad you didn't want to have to live in an institution at some point in her life. That's why she wanted the choice. If she would have been able to live the rest of her life in her home, in her community, that would have been a very different thing. But remember, you're marginalizing this to one particular protected group of people.
Okay, thank you very much.
On a particular set of characteristics.
Thank you, Ms. Carr. And lastly, we'll have Mr. McGregor for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Co-Chair, and I appreciate the testimony from all of our witnesses today. When this motion was passed in the House of Commons, this committee has been tasked with exploring 5 different themes. And yes, it's within the context of medical assistance in dying, but I think also our committee has a little bit of leeway and freedom to consider many things that are also related to MAID. And I know when we've talked about the protection of persons with disabilities, we looked at this theme earlier in the year, so we've already got some great testimony on record. But I think it's important that, this committee's study of this particular theme, it's important to understand that this is taking place in the context of the federal government's disability inclusion plan. And of course, there's another House committee that's now examining Bill C-22, the Canada Disability Benefits Act. So maybe, Ms. Carr, I'll change tack a little bit and talk to you about, do you have anything you can add to, has your group been consulted or involved in those other areas, in the Disability Inclusion Plan, in the Canada Disability Benefit Act? I know, when it comes to economic security, that's just one small part of it, but I've spoken with a lot of constituents of mine out in Couch and Malahat Langford who've been real advocates on trying to get a federal disability benefit of about $2,200 a month. They think that, I think it's a fact when you look at the disability rates in each province, there's a state of legislated poverty, as they put it. So do you have any thoughts on the Canada Disability Benefit Act, the Disability Inclusion Plan, that you would like to see our committee concentrate on when it issues its final report and recommendations?
Okay, so there was a lot of questions in there. So the first is, yes, we've been consulted. I presented to HUMA actually earlier this week, and we have been involved, obviously, in the consultations around the Canada Disability Benefit, also the consultations around the Disability Inclusion Action Plan. So very heavily involved in all of those discussions, and certainly good things to be doing. Very supportive of that, and anything this committee can do to support those things, I think, is really, really good. The only thing I would say is a Canada Disability Benefit will certainly support the economic security if it's done well and it's adequate and all those things of a lot of Canadians with disabilities. 73% of the people that I serve who live outside the family home are living in poverty. And so, but however, it's not a substitute for keeping our MAID legislation at end of life. So I don't want to pit one off against the other and say, oh, well, you're going to make the MAID regime okay in track 2 if you go ahead and do these things. You will certainly make the lives of people with disabilities better by doing those things, and we will continue to fight for those things. But the issue still remains that the lack of supports and services, the lack of, the situations, people, the lack of housing options, all of the institutionalization, all the other factors that people face will still weigh heavily in the whole conversation that we're having today, because they're simply, the only safeguard we have is that people are supposed to be told what's available to them. Well, I can guarantee you when people are showing up in our MAID system and asking about MAID, they know what is quote unquote available, but they have never been able to get it, or it isn't available, or they've been on a wait list for 10 years, et cetera.
I appreciate that. I'm just saying that because there is no legislation before the House right now, so I think our committee has a fair bit of latitude in each of these 5 themes of how expansive we want to be in terms of our recommendations and final report. Ms. Peters, I have 45 seconds. I don't want to leave you out. If you wanted to add anything to this, please go ahead.
I'm going to have to bear with my voice. I think that, first of all, there's a lot of misrepresenting of what is necessary for autonomous decision making. And in terms of poverty, you have to understand that poverty is both a cause of our oppression, but it's also a manifestation of the position that disabled people hold in society. There is no one who is not disabled who would qualify for track 2. So the question of it's discrimination no, that makes absolutely no sense. And in terms of poverty, the problem and the concerns, there are many concerns that we are hearing at the disability filibuster about the disability benefit. There are gatekeeping, the criteria, the how these things will be enacted. There's a lot of unknowns, but it doesn't even seem to offer the hope of moving above the poverty line. There's new research out that has shown that the poverty line has an ableist bias. There's a paper in a peer-reviewed journal showing something disabled people have said all along, which is that it costs more to live as a disabled person in Canada.
Thank you, Ms. Peters. Thank you very much. And now I will turn this over to my co-chair for the next round of questions.
Thank you, Senator Martin. Nous allons commencer avec
We'll start with Senator Meji for 3 minutes, please. Thank you to the witnesses for being here today. My question is for Ms. Carr. During the study of Bill C-7 in the Senate, we had witnesses, disabled persons, appear before us, and they stated that many disabled persons consider themselves to be vulnerable and that the label of vulnerability already amounts to stigmatization, and that they have the right, they are entitled, just like everyone, to ask or make their request themselves. Now, in your opinions, or in your opinion, what is the role of the state in terms of drawing a line between protecting disabled persons who are likely to be vulnerable and the need to respect individual choice of these persons? How do we avoid infantilizing them? Because they actually used that term by calling them vulnerable. We are, quote unquote, infantilizing them. Your thoughts, please.
People with disabilities are not vulnerable. They are made vulnerable. They are put in situations of vulnerability based on the socioeconomic and all the things we've already talked about. So I won't repeat that again. And I think the question that you're asking me is whether or not that there are some people with disabilities who want to be able to choose whether or not they are able to make a decision about dying. And I guess I would say the answer that I would say, I'm not trying to infantilize anyone. I think what I would say to that question is that What we're talking about here is that we have two tracks. We have a track for people at end of life who are suffering intolerably and whose lives are going to be finished soon and getting to choose the timing, et cetera, et cetera. But we have this other track that's only been pigeonholed to one particular group of people. Anybody else in the country, by virtue of being any other marginalized population, indigenous, racialized, whatever, doesn't, who says they're suffering intolerably from factors that are external to their personal characteristics, isn't getting offered death. We're giving them support to live good lives. So I guess that's the point that I am making here, is that we are more marginalizing and more devaluing and facing people, we're basically telling people with disabilities that having a disability is a fate worse than death. And we're not just getting people asking for MAID, we are having people with disabilities constantly being offered MAID now as a healthcare choice. When they show up in the healthcare system with a healthcare issue that is not terminal and they're living in difficult conditions, we've got story after story of people being offered MAID as a solution to their healthcare situation.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to Senator Kutcher for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. I just want to make sure that I understand the Bureau de Quebec position. So I have two questions. That's the first one, and then the second one. Should a person with a disability be denied access to MAID solely because of their disability if they meet all established legal and medical criteria?
C'est pour le barreau.
The question is for the bar. Well, the disability, it's the same criteria. It has to be a serious and irremediable healthcare issue. So one would meet that same criteria. A disabled person would be disabled, but who doesn't have a serious illness or irremediable illness would not be eligible for MAID. So therefore, these serious and irremediable problems should also include intolerable suffering. So any medical assessment would remain the same for, as we said earlier, people like Mr. Truchon and Ms. Gladue. In other words, the criteria for the Quebec Bar Association would be the same, and the assessment conducted by the professional care team would be the same. When it comes to free and informed consent, the same holds true. The individual, the disabled person, should be offered care and services to determine whether there are possible alternatives to the MAID request, and in order to ensure the free and informed consent of the individual.
Thank you. The second question, you talked about earlier about legislative safeguards, but there are also clinical safeguards. And I'm wondering if you think that there should be a similar report conducted to addressing the needs of people with disabilities, which are extensive needs, and we're not filling them well. The same way that an expert panel conducted a review of mental disorder as a sole underlying condition. Would a review of that nature be useful for helping guide this discussion?
Rapidement, s'il vous plaît.
Very quickly, if you would. Well, yes, indeed. Now, the thing is that in Quebec, the Commission on End-of-Life Care that receives these forms and which compiles statistics and monitors the enforcement of these safeguards, well, maybe the Commission could consider clinical safeguards. in order to better explain what the reasons are for asking for MAID. I know in the most recent review of the Commission, a number of statistics were laid out regarding individuals that sought MAID, and what I can tell you is that 73% of those people had cancer in the last report from the Commission in April 2020 to the 31st of March 2022. And that their prognosis was that they had 6 months left to live. So, yes, we do get some medical information, clinical information, that help us to assess which individuals should receive MAID in Quebec and for which reasons.
Sénateur Delphond.
Merci, monsieur.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairperson, and thank you to our guests this morning. It's always appreciated. My questions are for the Quebec Bar Association that I'd particularly like to thank for taking part in our work. We're always glad to have the Barreau participate. I understand that the Barreau, in fact, appeared in the Superior Court in the Truchon and Gladu cases. Is that correct? And as part of in that light, now, Ms. Gladu was born with a seriously disabling condition throughout her entire life. What would you say to people who claim that such individuals can't make a clear and informed test? And therefore, would that pass the Canadian Charter test, the Quebec Charter test? Response. The Barreau du Québec, in fact, didn't appear on the Mr. Truchon case, but Ms. Leblanc, who was deceased before the court handed down its decision. The Barreau is of the opinion that the Superior Court's decision that overturned the criteria of reasonably foreseeable death was in fact violated the Canadian Charter of Rights and wasn't justified under Section 1, and therefore we maintain that position today. So excluding disabled persons because they are vulnerable, in your opinion, that flies in the face of the Canadian Charter. Is that correct? Yes, we do believe that. It's contrary to the Charter.
Senator Delphond.
Thank you, Senator Delphond.
Senator Wallen for 3 minutes.
Thank you very much. Just a couple of questions for Vaux and Michelle on the legal issues. As you may or may know, legislation pending in the Senate.
Sorry, Senator Wallen. Sorry to interrupt. This quality of your sound is not coming through. It's hard to hear and understand what you're saying. I'm wondering. Oh, that was actually if you raise it, it sounded a little bit. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I got that. Is that a bit better?
No.
Put it a little bit higher, please.
Okay, that seems very. Is that okay?
No, it's going in and out.
Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to take your questions, Senator Wallen. The quality of the sound is not good enough. We'll now go to Senator Martin.
Wallen. So, Ms. Carr, your advocacy organization for disability rights, your group had rallied in opposition to Bill C-7, and you talked about how since then you've been inundated with calls, etc. Do you believe that the voices of those you represented were heard by those that needed to hear your concerns?
No. No, they were not. And they're still not really being heard. And in the lead up to Bill C-7, the whole disability community, including ourselves, predicted we would get to exactly where we are now. And besides the calls that come into our office and our federation across the country, you can't open up a newspaper without seeing a story or multiple stories every day that are public and in the news about these situations. And it's really quite devastating to our whole community.
So you are here today on behalf of those you represent, and there are other advocacy groups, including Ms. Peters. I have limited time, but is there anything you wish to say to this committee? We're listening, and we'd like to know what concerns and or other recommendations you have.
we had over 200 organizations representing persons with disabilities sign an open letter. This is not a religious rights issue, it's a disability rights issue. And while you may feel you are giving this particular protected group of people a right to die, what they really need is a right to live on an equal basis with others. And without that, then the right to die is only going to mean we have a far, far, far less people with disabilities living in our country. And that is frankly a travesty.
If I have time, Ms. Peters, you mentioned that you have done 80 Zooms, and I'm just wondering what some of your key findings, or maybe the common thread, key things that we should be aware of that you have heard in your Zoom gatherings that you've held.
Fear, a great deal of fear and overwhelming. You have to understand that none of you understand what it's like to go to a doctor and ask for help and have them suggest death, and how that irrevocably alters your relationship. And many are avoiding medical care that they need. Others are struggling with it setting off suicidal ideation that they finally had under control after years and years of therapy. It's taunting us. People are suggesting the questions in this panel of what people are saying we are saying make no sense to me. How can you discriminate? How can you ask if we're saying only disabled people shouldn't be allowed when the only people who are eligible are disabled people? So this is not a matter, you have singled us out, not us.
Thank you very much, Ms. Peters. Thank you, Senator Martin. Back to you for the control.
Yes, and again, we want to thank all of our witnesses for appearing before us today. This is a very difficult topic for all of us, and we thank you for your testimonies. With that, we'll suspend for a few minutes to prepare for our second panel. We want to thank our witnesses who are here in person, as well as those joining us by video conference. We have, as individuals, Alicia Duncan and Christy Duncan by video conference, du Collège des Médecins du Québec. We have Dr. André Luyet, Executive Director, and Dr. Maurice Gaudreau, President. And from Arch Disability Law Center, we have Carrie Joff, staff lawyer, also by video conference. So thank you for being here with us, everyone. And we'll begin with opening remarks. You each have 5 minutes. Now, if there are two of you sharing that time, last time I thought it was two people sharing, but if you are, you can please indicate. We will begin with opening remarks by Alicia Duncan and Christy Duncan. I'm assuming will you share your time, or will there be one person speaking?
Yes, we'll be sharing our time. I'll start, and then my sister will continue.
Wonderful, thank you. So you have 5 minutes, followed by Dr. Luyet and Dr. Gaudreau, and lastly, Ms. Joff. So we will begin with the 5-minute testimony first from Alicia and Christy Duncan. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, bonjour. My name is Christy Duncan, and I am here today with my sister Alicia to share our family's experience regarding medical assistance in dying. While we are not philosophically opposed to MAID, our concern is the current legislation is written in a way that many Canadians are accessing MAID out of desperation and not dignity as it was originally intended. Our mother, Donna Duncan, chose to end her life through MAID on October 29th, 2021. This was hours after being released from a psychiatric unit for a suicide attempt 72 hours earlier. Today, we will focus on the facts that we have uncovered through her medical records and the police investigation we initiated into whether the safeguards for MAID were followed before she was given a lethal injection. In February of 2020, as a result of a minor car accident, our mother was diagnosed with post-concussion syndrome by her general practitioner of more than 20 years. However, due in part to the global pandemic, she was not able to access immediate counseling and physical rehabilitation. As her symptoms worsened, she was referred to a complex chronic disease clinic with over a year-long wait list. During this time, her sensitivity to touch, sight, and smell worsened. She claimed she felt pain when eating, which led to her refusal to eat most foods, and as such lost a significant amount of weight. On October 14th, 2021, she asked her GP to assess her for MAID, but he refused as he did not feel she had followed his medical recommendations, and he did not believe she was on a trajectory for death. On October 24th, 2021, our mother had her initial assessment for MAID by Dr. Grace Park, and 2 days later by Sean Young, a nurse practitioner who approved her to die 48 hours later, after meeting her only once. How did the opinion of someone who had been caring for my mother for over 20 years carry less weight than the opinion of two people who had just met her and simply ticked off boxes in a MAID assessment form? Upon her approval, my sister and I were able to delay her death through the courts as her mental health was in question. Following this, she was further assessed by several psychiatrists who all documented that they believed the decision for MAID was being made in haste, but there was nothing they could legally do to prevent her from accessing it as she was found to be sound of mind. Our mother had been a psychiatric nurse her entire career, and our family believes that she manipulated the psychiatrist because she knew what answers to provide. As of today, we have been denied access to our mother's documents related to her MAID death, despite the fact that my sister is the executor of my mother's estate. As such, we have been unable to confirm which track our mother applied and was approved for, and therefore which safeguards were followed or violated. Alicia?
Thank you. Today in Canada, in order to qualify for MAID, you must have an incurable medical condition and experience suffering that is intolerable to you. By that definition, the majority of Canadians qualify for MAID. The core legislation itself is problematic. Based on our experience, we have outlined the following recommendations for your final report. Mandatory access to healthcare. If not giving Canadians access to MAID infringes on their human rights, then not giving them access to much needed healthcare in a timely manner also infringes on those rights. We require clear definitions. Imminent is defined as about to happen. This needs to be clearly defined in our legislation in the context of MAID and where imminent death is foreseeable. We also require clearly defined safeguards. The current safeguards are just too ambiguous. There should be an increased number of independent witnesses. There should be a requirement for at least 3 independent witnesses to be formally interviewed as part of the assessment. There should also be a pre-death assessment review. Doctors should be required to submit all assessments to an independent review board prior to a patient's death. Continuity of care. Multiple assessments should be completed by the same medical professional. The primary doctor's opinion should hold the most amount of weight in a MAID assessment. Mandatory wait periods. There should be no exemptions for patients with mental health or non-terminal disabilities. And mandatory release of records. Hospitals and health authorities should be required to release unredacted copies of their MAID assessment records to those who are entitled to them. Donna Duncan was our mother's name. Please don't forget her and help us ensure her death was not in vain. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that testimony. Next, we will...
Point of order,
Yes?
Madam Chair. Can we advise our witnesses or those in the gallery not to take pictures during the session? There are some pictures being taken and a recording, so I believe the rules indicate that you cannot take any pictures during this.
Yes, thank you very much for that. So Dr. Luyet and Dr. Gaudreau, will you be sharing your time as well? Okay, thank you. So you will have 5 minutes in total.
Merci.
Thank you.
Yes, I agreed that that is indeed the rule.
I didn't hear a warning to the
Were
witnesses.
people warned and told not to do
Okay,
that?
so
didn't hear that.
I assumed everyone was listening, but sorry. So the warning is that during our proceedings, there should be no photographs taken.
Yeah, so I believe there is someone who took pictures, but someone also recording, Madam
Someone, and recording, definitely. So those are not allowed. Yes, so everyone is in understanding of that.
But before we proceed, can we have assurances that that recording is not happening and that pictures are not being taken?
Can't see the full screen. So are you saying that online someone is recording? Or someone that's in this room? Okay, so everyone understands that. Okay, I see nodding heads, so that thank you for that reminder. Thank you. So next we will go to Dr. Luyet.
C'est moi qui vais commencer.
I'll begin, if I may, Madam Chairperson. Madam Co-Chair, Mr. Co-Chair, ladies and gentlemen, Vice Chairs, members of the committee, hello, I'm Dr. Maurice Gaudreau, President of the Collège des Médecins du Québec, which represents over 30,000 physicians and aspiring physicians, all specialities included. I'm accompanied by the Director General of the College, Dr. André Luet. I've been a family physician for over 40 years, and Dr. Luet has been a psychiatrist for over 30 years. Thank you for welcoming us and allowing us to speak on the issue of disability and medical assistance in dying. First of all, I'd like to remind you that the mission of the Collège is to protect the public by offering quality medicine. We are a professional order that should not be confused with the medical federations that defend the interests of their members. The College made its voice heard in this very room on medical assistance in dying through the voice of Dr. Louis Roy just a few weeks ago, and it didn't go unnoticed. Even Federal Minister Carla Qualtrough, who is responsible for the inclusion of people with disabilities, was outraged at what she was told was the College's position on babies from birth to 1 year of age. Let's set the record straight, please. Medical assistance in dying is a form of care, a medical act that may be appropriate in certain circumstances. It is not a political or moral or religious issue. It is a medical issue. Medical assistance in dying is governed by the Criminal Code. It is regulated by court rulings, and it has been the subject of ethical and deontological discussions for nearly 2 decades. Its acceptance is now complete. Society has evolved. There is a growing individualization of care. Now, each individual is taken into account as a whole and not just as a member of a reference or benchmark group. On the issue of babies from 0 to 1 year of age, the College believes that for this group as well, medical assistance in dying can offer an ethical and responsible alternative to avoid an unacceptable and unavoidable end of life in unbearable suffering. We have written a report on the issue of medical assistance in dying last December, or in December 2021, a rigorous report that required a year of reflection by recognised experts, including Dr. Luet, that required a year of reflection, as I said. We presented it to the Quebec government in December 2021. It said that in the case of a very poor prognosis and appalling living conditions, in cases of severe malformations or severe polysymptomatic syndromes, eliminating any prospect of relief and survival, medical assistance was possible. The College has never talked about euthanizing babies. Still less did it talk about administering medical aid in dying without parents' consent. The College said that this was a prospect to be explored and that the suffering of the parents must also be taken into account. In the same vein, for mature minors aged 14 to 18, our thinking is based on the following considerations. Suffering does not take age into account. Suffering has no age. The law already recognises the right of minors from the age of 14 to consent alone to certain types of care, such as abortion. The consent of the parents or guardian is mandatory when the care represents a serious risk to the health of the minor. On the issue of disability, the College believes that it causes suffering from some patients that is just as intolerable and unfortunately unbearable as in the case of certain serious diseases. From a medical point of view, physical and mental suffering can be assessed clinically, in particular by direct observation, a questionnaire and a clinical examination by the physician. It's also a fact that the person affected, when capable, is able to express what he or she feels, and this also applies to vulnerable clients such as people under curatorship or incapable of consenting. In closing, we'd like to take this opportunity to remind you of the urgent need to harmonise Quebec and Canadian legislation regarding the notion of disability. The Canadian law uses the terms illness, affection and handicap, while the Quebec law uses the word illness only. This limits the use of this care for some Quebecers who would be entitled to it if they lived anywhere else in the country. For the Collège des Médecins, there can no longer be two laws for the same suffering. We thank you for your attention, and we'd be delighted to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gaudreau, and apologies for mispronouncing any of your names. Next, we are going to hear from Ms. Joffe.
Thank you. Good morning, members of the committee. I am a lawyer working at Arch Disability Law Center. Arch is a specialty legal clinic that provides legal services to people with disabilities in Ontario. Arch is a poverty law clinic, meaning the majority of the legal services we provide are to low-income people with disabilities. Arch also works on national and international disability rights. We are deeply concerned about the availability of MAID for people with disabilities whose death is not reasonably foreseeable. At Arch, we have clients who have died by MAID, who have applied for MAID or are contemplating MAID, not because they want to die, but because they cannot get the housing, medical care, disability services, or supports that they need, and they are too poor to afford to purchase these services privately. I'll give you just one example with details and identifying information changed to protect the privacy of the person. A person in their 30s with a degenerative neurological condition who has very limited mobility. They need assistance with all activities of daily living. That includes getting out of bed, getting dressed, toileting, cooking, cleaning, grocery shopping, etc. This person has quote unquote high support needs, but lives a full life in their own apartment, works part-time, spends time with friends, volunteers. And this is possible because they receive some provincial funding to hire their own attendants, and they have family who fill in the extra hours of support. Recently, however, their family member died, leaving them without support for many hours each day. They've been refused additional funding or attendance services. They've been told that the only way to get their high support needs met is to move into a long-term care facility. Moving would require the person to leave their community, give up most of their employment, give up their independence, and live in a completely inappropriate setting amongst seniors more than double their age. Facing this choice, which is not really a choice, the person has decided to apply for MAID, and they've been very clear. They don't want to die. They are not suffering because of their disability. They want to continue living in a dignified way in the community, but that's not possible because the supports they need are not available. And it's these kinds of clients' experiences and numerous similar cases that have been reported in the media that leave us deeply concerned about the dangerous impact that Track 2 is having on low-income disability communities. The Track 2 safeguards built into the legislation may be intended to protect vulnerable people and ensure that decisions about MAID are free, informed, and unambiguous. But in our experience, the reality is there is no real free choice for people with disabilities who exist in pervasive socioeconomic deprivation and who have no alternatives for living a dignified life in the community. I am not expressing an ideological position that is anti-MAID, nor am I expressing a position that seeks to undermine autonomy or the right to make decisions about one's own life. Everyone must be free to choose, especially when it comes to deeply personal decisions about life and death. What I am pointing out today, based on the experiences of the clients and disability communities that ARCH works with, is that our law appears to offer freedom to choose medical assistance in dying, but in fact, there is no freedom of choice for many disabled people. At a UN conference in June, Professor Gerard Quinn, the UN Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, said that when it comes to autonomy, it is important to distinguish between myth and operation. There is a myth that MAID law gives us all equal rights to make decisions about our death. But in operation, in reality, for many people with disabilities, choices are weighed down by accumulated disadvantages. We cannot talk about free, uncoerced choice if we are not at the same time radically addressing social and economic supports, expanding access to healthcare and housing systems, and in short, giving people with disabilities the wherewithal to live the lives that they want to live in the communities of their choosing. Canadian law has recognized this concept too. The Supreme Court of Canada has said that equality looks not only at the choices that are available to individuals, but at the social and economic environments in which they play out. In Canadian law, an equality analysis recognizes that some people may be disproportionately affected by structural conditions which constrain their choices. ARCH urges the committee in its final report to government to be clear that some people with disabilities are being induced to consider, apply for, and go through with MAID, not because they are suffering because of their disability, but because of social and economic inequality. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you to all of our witnesses once again as we continue our study of this very important topic. I'm going to begin with the first 5 minutes to Mr. Cooper.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Alicia and Christy Duncan, whoever wishes to answer, you mentioned in your testimony that you've not been able to access the MAID records of your mother's case. Can you tell us more about that?
I can answer that question. So I applied for a Freedom of Information request for my mother's assessments, and I'll actually read to you their response. They subjectively decided that I was not acting on my mother's behalf, and they stated, when an applicant is not clearly acting on behalf of the deceased, we must treat the request as an ordinary request by one individual for another person's information. They continued to go on and say that
who are, sorry to interrupt, who is they?
Sorry, they. This is from Fraser Health. So as the executor of my mother's estate, I have legal right to her medical records. and I've requested her documentation for MAID, and they've denied me. They've subjectively decided that I am not acting in her best benefit, in my mother's benefit. I'm trying to ensure that the safeguards were followed, and I don't even know if she applied under track 1 or track 2 because I can't gain any information on this. The police were also denied this information.
Were denied this information? You've got to be, can you elaborate on that and what the status of the investigation is? That just seems incredible.
I'll let my sister speak to that.
Currently, the police investigation is concluded pending further information. The police did state to us that they were stonewalled by all of the organizations, Fraser Health. They went to the privacy commissioner requesting this information. They were not provided this information. They would need to have written...
Specifically, which information?
Access to my mom's medical assessments, communication regarding her MAID assessments. And they advised us that they would need a production order to access this information. However, they weren't able to gain enough information to be able to write a production order. So they basically said they were stonewalled and not able to get what they needed for their investigation.
Didn't have enough information to get a production order because they were being stonewalled.
Correct.
And so in essence, they were going in a circle, basically.
Yes,
basically.
Absolutely.
And so, but can you elaborate on some of those efforts to thwart the investigation and who was involved in thwarting the investigation?
Yes, exactly.
It smells of a cover-up.
I mean, if there was no negligence, then it would be in their benefit to release this documentation. And so far they have not, which makes me feel the same way, that it smells like a cover-up to me. I do have the police report in front of me. I can read out exactly what.
Please read that into the record.
Okay, let me just get to this.
While my sister is looking this up, I'd like to add it's the Abbotsford Police Department that's been investigating my mother's death, and they have said to us that should we find any other information that would allow them to reopen this case, they'd be more than happy to do so. However, as we mentioned, we've been stonewalled and with zero access to any additional information. They can't continue the investigation.
And go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, I've got the concluding remarks here from Monday, August 29th, 2022 at 14:39 hours. After a full investigation into the matter of MAID and their role in assisting Duncan at the end of her life, investigators could not find any criminality in the part of MAID that was contrary to the Criminal Code of Canada. After reviewing all the materials, procedures for Duncan's doctor's hospital records, Fraser Health and MAID involvement with Duncan at the end of her life, police learned that Duncan was of clear operating mind. That was based on several medical opinions, including Duncan's family doctor, that she was capable and able to make her own decisions throughout the process with MAID. And Detective Pullen was unable to find any grounds to support the allegation by Duncan's daughters that MAID went outside of the criminal code, causing Duncan to end her life against her will. But what they said to us in person is that they were not able to find any grounds to support the allegation because they were not given the documentation.
Okay, unfortunately, we've come to the end of the 5 minutes. Okay, thank you very much. And next, I believe I have Monsieur Arsenault for 5 minutes.
Merci, Madame la
Thank you, Madam Co-Chairperson, and thank you to all of our witnesses here today. This is a very difficult subject for members of the committee as well, so we're very glad that you're here to support us in our thinking process on this issue. The Duncan sisters, an absolutely cruel situation you've had to come to grips with, terrible. but I understand that you're not opposed to MAID per se, but it's because your mother, as you explained, was a brilliant individual who, with her professional past, was able to tell the physicians exactly what they needed or wanted to hear because of a past professional life. And I don't want to be impolite, and I hope that the interpreter is able to faithfully render my remarks. But if I understand you correctly, it was her family doctor of 20 years who denied her access to MAID, but your mother was able to go, quote-unquote, shopping for MAID elsewhere. That was my understanding. Now, you also talked about a lot of safeguards or guardrails. Now, I really appreciated hearing about that, but I come from a rural region, and safeguards shouldn't be an impediment to those people who rightfully and appropriately ask for MAID. And I don't want overly strict measures in the context of urban centres to disproportionately and adversely affect those in rural areas. Am I right to say that one safeguard would be that the individual that calls for MAID, that their family doctor be the first person consulted by the care team?
L'une des deux.
One of you, please.
My sister and I do believe that one of the major contributing factors in my mother's passing was there was no continuity of care. Each assessment was done by a different psychiatrist. At one point in her medical records, we've now noted that she was diagnosed with psychosomatic disorder. And at that point, my mother's partner took control of her medications. My mother immediately called for another assessment. She knew all of the things to say to have that taken back, and so she could continue on. She was very unwell.
Est-ce que vous savez?
Now, I'm sorry to cut you off. I have such limited speaking time, but do you know whether the psychiatrist consulted the family doctor's notes?
Christy, you can answer.
Yes, I do believe that the first psychiatrist did call the general practitioner, and they had a discussion regarding that. They both had concerns for my mom's mental health. Another thing to note is that they all worked together in a professional manner as well. So they knew my mom from a professional standpoint as well a personal doctor relationship. So they could see the deterioration of her, and they both have said, it's documented in her medical records, that they did not believe that she should go through with MAID.
Merci.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Gaudreau and Mr. Luyet, one of the two of you, please, regarding moral suffering. Now, of an individual who would seek MAID as a person with a disability. How should I put this? Given the lack of resources available to a person with a disability and the idea of moral suffering, how can one be sure that the person is fully cognizant of what they're really asking, i.e. for medical assistance in dying? Your microphone, please, sir. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Well, a quick answer, and then my colleague who's a psychiatrist can tack on to that. The important thing is the relationship between the family doctor and the patient. The same is true for the Duncan sisters. The relationship between the family doctor and the individual, especially when they've been getting care from the family doctor for 20 years, everything hinges around that relationship. The attentiveness, the empathy demonstrated towards the patient on the part of the family physician.
Oui.
Yes, well, first, one must recognize and acknowledge that the suffering might be great, especially in the mental health context. That much strikes us as being obvious and at the very least very important to acknowledge. And yet there are guardrails, there are conditions, and this should never be the default choice as a result of a dearth of services. The patient decides to put an end to their suffering because there aren't available mechanisms and care to them. So we've had an opportunity to think at length about this issue, and we have put forward 5 criteria to assess a MAID request when mental health is involved. Now, I know I don't have much time, but I'd just like to enumerate them if I may. A decision that... I'm sorry to cut you off.
Par le demandeur et non inscrite uniquement dans un épisode.
Excusez-moi. I apologize that it's 1 minute over time, so would you submit that to the committee, those 5 points that you are about to articulate? Merci beaucoup. Thank you. And next we'll go to Monsieur Thériault for 5 minutes.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. My questions will be directed at the Collège des Médecins du Québec. Thank you for being here in person with us today. Now, I have several questions. Right off the bat, now, I heard what you had to say regarding some particular issues, but you did say that there's an issue due to the fact that the 2 laws between Quebec and Canada aren't harmonized. And there are no additional guardrails when it comes to illness, affection, or disability. So in Quebec, there was the Truchon decision, and it was very clear that the court, this was, in fact, violating these disabled persons' right to life. But if it's a car accident, for example, or disease, well, it would seem that one can't give access to those individuals to MAID, at least in Quebec. So what led to this, and why did the minister backtrack on this particular issue? Well, in Quebec, we only talk about illness, not affliction or disability. So the Canadian law and the Quebec law are in conflict with each other. And sometimes there are requests for MAID from patients which are complicated by this lack of harmonization. The Quebec legislation trumps the Canadian legislation in Quebec, and that is why I said that you can't have 2 laws for the same suffering. Oftentimes, physicians are aware of cases that would require MAID, and yet Quebec legislation doesn't allow it. Question, why is it that you claim that the debate didn't really take place in Quebec, and yet there was Gladue and Truchon, which enables disabled persons to get access to MAID? What was the issue there? Response, well, I think that this will be rehashed in Quebec. There'll be new legislation that will be brought forward that will focus in on this particular anomaly. But the problem is that physicians, in the case of a disabled person, cannot provide MAID to a patient in Quebec, and yet they could do so in another province other than Quebec, based on the same criteria. And that's why it's so crucial to harmonize the legislation. And I think that the Quebec Bar Association told you that this morning. Question. The criminal code takes precedence when it comes to medical procedures, in my opinion. Who in Quebec would sanction any conduct that was in compliance with the criminal code? Well, we haven't seen that occur yet. And physicians, and the college has said that the physicians can follow either legislation. But we were wrapped over the knuckles when we expressed that opinion, but we didn't change tack, we didn't change our opinion, and there's no issue with physicians deciding to go by the Canadian law or the Quebec law, and yet it puts them in a tough spot. It puts them in a difficult position and creates a level of anxiety that they shouldn't have to deal with. question. Well, I understand that, but what is the issue here? I was really surprised to hear parliamentarians tell us that there was no debate in Quebec. Now, let's say there's a young person that has a car accident that becomes a quadriplegic and he's not granted access to MAID. From a clinical standpoint, what would occur were you to get a request following a car accident 2 months after the accident? Do you think a quadriplegic young person a couple of months later would get access to MAID under Canadian legislation currently? Well, what we believe, and we said this earlier, it has nothing to do with the age of the individuals. It should be on a case-by-case basis. And we're talking about care here, healthcare. MAID is a form of healthcare, and MAID is one of the multiple forms of healthcare. Are you telling us that 2 months later the individual would have access or would not have access? You mean that over that 2-month period, all other forms of care would have been exhausted, and then at that particular point you would ensure that he's not suicidal or depressed, and that given that time frame, well, that would mean that, is that the clinical reality that you have to come to grips with? Well, what I'm telling you is that we're talking about a whole array of healthcare that the patient would be entitled to. And perhaps over the course of their illness, MAID could be one of those options.
We go to Mr. McGregor. You have the floor for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Co-Chair. Thank you to all of our witnesses for joining us today. Maybe I'll start with the Arch Disability Law Centre, Ms. Joff. I was listening to your opening statement and I was taking a number of notes down. And because, of course, you're involved in law, maybe you can provide us with an informed opinion, like on the safeguards part for a natural death that is not foreseeable in the criminal code. The person has to be informed of the means available to relieve their suffering, including counseling services, mental health and disability support services, community services, etc. And I know that in many parts of the country that is lacking. How is it that, like in your experience and with the clients that you are serving, how is it that physicians are meeting that criteria? Do they have to identify specific services? I just wondering what kind of feedback are you getting from your clients in how that part of the criminal code is being met, that requirement?
Thank you for the question. I can't say that I've had in-depth conversations with my clients about all of the steps that physicians are taking to inform them of services that might be available to alleviate their suffering. But I can tell you from a sort of broader perspective that we, and with the clients that I've worked with, their concern is it's not so much that they're not being informed of what's available, it's that they have for years or months or really extended periods of time tried to avail themselves of the services that are in fact available to them. And they either have encountered extensive barriers in not being able to access those services, or the supports that they need are simply not available. You know, that goes to the example that I was talking to in my opening remarks about a person who needs, who has high support needs attendance services, and has been told by the state, by the provincial authorities, we're not going to provide you that level of care in the community. If you want that level of care, you need to move in, you need to institutionalize yourself. So so while I can't speak specifically to the steps that physicians are taking, I would imagine that physicians are put into a very difficult position because they are required to inform people of what's available, but what's available often does not meet people's needs. And that's the crux of the issue that we're talking about here when we're talking about whether people are truly able to make a real decision.
Yeah, no, I think I understand you. Like this safeguard is triggered only after a request for MAID is made. And that's usually at the end of a very long road where a person has gone through with a lack of services. So no, your point is very well taken. Maybe to the Duncan sisters, I think Alicia, you had made some recommendations at the end there. The need for clearer definitions, mandatory access to healthcare, clear safeguards, and so on. Just on that same point, like for track 2, there is a requirement, like this is when death is not naturally foreseeable. There is a requirement that the person who is assessing has to make sure that the person is aware of all of these different services. Do you have any comments on that? Sort of the same thematic question I had.
I do have some comments on that. Mainly, our mother was fully aware that she had these options. Her condition had deteriorated so far at that point that she had suicidal ideation. And because she couldn't access the care that she needed in a timely manner, I think that's like an important part to put in there, in a timely manner. It had gone so far that she really, even though she knew there was access to all of these clinics, it seemed like such a daunting thing to her that it was just easier to end her life at that point. And I think it's speaks again to what Carrie was just saying, is that doctors are put in a hard position. They can say, do you understand that there are these treatments available? And then the MAID assessor goes, check, I asked them if they know about these, not going like, what were the steps that you took? Were you able to access this? Why? Looking more into it as opposed to just check marks on a box. There's no in-depth assessment.
Thank you. And I will turn this now over to you, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Madame Co-Chair. Nous commencerons avec...
Now, Senator Meji for 3 minutes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. My question is for the Collège des Médecins. Apart from the anecdotes we've heard in the media, among your members that provide MAID, have you heard a story of, as that described by Maître Dorfi earlier, of a young disabled person who wants to live, but because they'd be in long-term care, asks for MAID? Now, if one of your members was faced with that situation, what advice would you give them? Well, I'd like to respond, and I think Dr. Lui would too. But what I would say is that all individuals in all conditions should have access to the entire array of medical care tailored to their particular issue, through to acute care and rehabilitation. And it's a relationship between the patient and the GP that they be provided all the options in terms of healthcare. It's also important to clarify what consent is, whether consent is there, what the options are, what the outcomes of the various options are, what assistance might be provided to the individual, what the availability and accessibility of that healthcare is. I think that should be discussed transparently and frankly within this patient-doctor relationship.
Merci.
Thank you. I have another question for Ms. Joffé. Now, when you assess an individual, when a doctor assesses an individual for access to MAID, normally it's based on the criteria. Now, could anyone call into question the doctor's assessment by saying, well, they've taken only into account all the stigma that disabled individuals face? Because to the public, that might make them mistrust medical professionals. Before MAID even existed, well, those individuals had the very same doctors and the very same nurses. So having MAID on the table and available, does that in and of itself create a situation of mistrust between patients and healthcare professionals. So, for example, in the case of the young person who was 31 years of age.
So, Ms. Joff, you have a short time to answer that question if you heard it.
Thank you for the question. I did hear it. I think without a doubt, it does create a very difficult relationship between people with disabilities and their healthcare providers. And I think, in the work that I do, what I've heard expressed by clients and by communities, people with disabilities, is a feeling of abandonment by the government and a sentiment of why are governments not providing us with the supports that we need to address suffering, rather than offering death as an end to suffering. And I would just say that, as I said before, that I think it is putting some healthcare professionals in very difficult positions. And we've seen, op-eds in the media, and I think the committee has heard testimony from physicians about some of those difficult positions that they're put in because of the regime.
Thank you. Senator Couture.
Thank you very much, Chair. Two questions, first for the Collège de Médecins de Québec and then for Ms. Joffe. The previous panel talked about safeguards. We talked about safeguards for people with disabilities in MAID, and they focus on legislative safeguards. The expert panel on MAID for mental disorder as a sole underlying condition came up with a very thorough report, which included various safeguards. Would you think that a similar kind of process, similar kind of report would be useful to address these really legitimate concerns of people with disabilities?
Well, I mentioned this briefly earlier, and I can submit the 5 criteria in writing in due course if you'd like. They would guide a safe decision-making process in these very specific situations.
So I would imagine that's a yes then, is it? Oui. Okay.
Yes, indeed.
Ms. Joffe, we've had very legitimate fears raised that large numbers of persons with disabilities would be forced to seek MAID because of intolerable components of their life conditions. And you spoke about some people that you have worked with who have shared that concern with you. We suffer from a lack of good data on what these numbers would be. Europe has had MAID for a much longer time than Canada. Would you have any data that's available that will let us know how many people who have received MAID there have been identified as having a disability or would have had MAID provided to them because they weren't able to access resources in those countries? I'll understand that some of those countries may have better resources than we have. Would you have any of that data available for us?
Thank you for the question. I do not have that data available for you. What I can provide is information based on the experiences and the legal practice that I do and that ARCH does, and based on also the information that we are receiving from some of our partners, disability advocacy groups from across the country. I also just want to say a couple more points, which is that, Senator Couture, you referred to fears that of the impact of the legislation on people with disabilities. And I am here today to tell you that it's not just a fear, it's a reality. We have clients who are living in poverty, who are people with disabilities, who are either seriously contemplating MAID, have applied for MAID, or who have gone through with MAID and have clearly expressed that it is not based on suffering, physical suffering because of their disability. It is entirely related to suffering because they cannot get their disability-related needs met, whether on a social basis and economic basis. So I can't give you data, but I can tell you from my experience.
We have just thank you, Senator Kutcher. Senator Delfont.
My questions would be for Mrs. Jaffe, just to follow up on what Senator Kutcher was asking. So you gave that example of this 30-year-old person that unfortunately has lost the support, family support needed. So the only option provided by the provincial health care was to go to a long-term health facility. Are you saying that we should not extend the track 2 that you argue is not acceptable, the track 2 access to MAID, because the provincial health system is not only providing long-term health care facilities, that the person should go to the health care facilities and stay there and without any options to ask for MAID? Because we're dealing here with the criminal code, we're not dealing with the provisions of health services.
Thank you for the question. I am not suggesting that the person should accept going into an institution, living out their entire life in an institution in a setting that's entirely inappropriate for them. What I am telling you is that that is the exact kind of discrimination and the exact kind of deprivation of the ability to live your life in dignity that is driving the people that I work with to consider or apply for or go through with MAID. And
you do with this, sorry to interrupt, because my time is limited, but so in that case, I guess you went to the rental board or some other authority on behalf of your client to get more provincial support?
Yeah, my role is to advocate as hard as I possibly can on behalf of my client to get the supports and the funding in place so that that person doesn't have to consider MAID.
I
but
understand.
The problem is that it's often unsuccessful.
But it's for you then, because it's unsuccessful, it's a reason to deny access to MAID. I understand your point. My next question is for the other witnesses. The Duncan family, I understand that your mother had a common law partner, Mr. Rick Henson, was reported in the press as talking about the unbearable sufferance that your mother went through for months and months. Is he part of your criminal allegations? Does he think that she was the subject of a faulty system?
Sorry, that Rick doesn't believe that it was part of a faulty system?
No, you say that the system faulted your mother, and I was asking if her common law partner, Mr. Henson, was also sharing your views and was part of the attempts trying to do to have legal inquiries and to have police investigations or the College of Medicines to investigate.
No. He does not support us. He had caregivers fatigue. It was a lot. He was taking care of my mom. Besides my sister and I coming in on the weekends to help bathe her. He was there 24 hours a day, and we believe that he had caregivers fatigue.
He specifically told us that he, as hard as it would be for as horrific as it would be for our mother to pass, at least he could get his life back. He said that to us 2 weeks before she died.
Thank you. Merci, Senator Delfont. Senator Wallin, we'll try this again. I hope your voice quality is higher.
Okay. Wondering if you can hear me.
I regret to say it's not any better. Terribly sorry. Senator Martin.
Thank you. To Christy and Alicia Duncan, first of all, I want to just say how both of you working so hard to take on the system in essence to get to the bottom of what happened. I think that's very admirable. My sister and I suffered through a situation of whether we should do the same after our father's death, but we just didn't have the energy nor the means, and so I just empathize with you greatly. But would you explain how did the Abbotsford Police get involved? Is it just through your request, or to launch an investigation? There must have been reason or grounds for that.
Yes, thank you. I had contacted the Abbotsford Police Department. My sister actually works for the RCMP, and we decided that we were going to review the criminal code after we received my mom's medical records, and it didn't indicate any. There was no terminal illness noted. The doctors had done extensive testing to rule out all forms of terminal illness. We actually had an autopsy completed after her death to confirm that there was no terminal illness as well. And there's so many contradictions in the criminal code itself. And we just didn't understand how, if my mom did not see, she was not facing a foreseeable death, but then didn't have to go through the 90-day assessment period. It was fast tracked. She died within a week of initially applying. The doctor who assessed her subjectively decided that her death was foreseeable. My mom was essentially starving herself. She was paranoid. I have records, she spent over $6,000 contacting a psychic to find out if foods were contaminated with lead poisoning. She was energy testing her food before she ate it. She was highly paranoid. And that it didn't make sense. And we went to the police with all the information that we had. They also agreed that there was no clear information, which is why they initiated the investigation.
And they did a very thorough investigation. They spent almost 8 months into this because they also couldn't understand why it wasn't followed. That there's so many contradictions between what we've been told and what's in the documentation that it seems suspicious to them too. And that's why they spent 8 months investigating this.
And you had mentioned that there wasn't a continuity of care, and so there's that challenge also, try and piece the parts together. And you also said that you weren't sure whether she qualified under Tract 1 or 2 because of how quickly it was done. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Without having a terminal diagnosis, we assumed that it was under Tract 2, but then didn't have to go through the 90-day assessment period. So we just need clarification. We need the documentation to confirm that all of the safeguards were followed.
And she wasn't at risk of losing her ability to consent. She was of sound mind, but that does not mean that she wasn't suicidal. She had being depressed doesn't make you not of sound mind. It makes you want to die. And that is what she got.
When we went through the courts and had her application postponed, she was so upset that she slit her wrists. And it was then that she was considered to be suicidal and was put into a psychiatric unit for the last 2 days of her life. And within 4 hours of being released, MAID killed her.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator Martin, and I'll turn it back to you now.
Okay, just a big thanks to all of the witnesses who appeared before our committee today. Thank you so much for taking the time, as well as just sharing with us your very important words. And with that, colleagues, I will bring this meeting to a close.